Hello there, Qckslvrslash, and today we have a video courtesy of Dom 3026 driving the Tier 6 Premium British cruiser, the Perth. Now, this is one of those ships that I never went around to getting myself, and part of it was, I didn't feel the need. I liked the Leander, but I loved the Fiji and really liked the Belfast. So there was no need for me to get another British ship. But fortunately, Dom 3026 did get it, and that means you guys get a chance to see it. Now, probably the most unique thing about the Perth is its smoke. Unlike the other British cruisers that you just get those two puffs that last for normal duration, the Perth's smoke is active for a very long time, but the individual puffs don't last all that long. Meaning, she's much better at creeping along, laying a very long concealing wall that the team moves through as she advances than that kind of stationary pop, smoke, and sit. Now, because those new puffs are coming all the time, as long as you're slowly advancing forward, it is creating new instances of smoke, so you're going to stay smoked, but you cannot sit perfectly still. And well, the first ship that Dom comes across is a Cleveland, which is a pretty respectable Tier 6 cruiser. It was amazing in beta, and it's still very respectable, can put a lot of damage out. So we're going to get to see how the Perth performs here. And while Dom 3026 swaps over to it, it's worth pointing out that yes, the Perth does get HE as well. Forgoes that special British AP and gets the two types of shells, just like the Belfast. But AP's all he needs there, 5,000 damage, looks like someone else hit pretty hard, and that leaves the Cleveland in a very sticky situation because he just doesn't have the hit points. Dom does a great job here, notices the Cleveland's turning, gets the HE loaded, ready to use the correct form of fire for the angle hull he's shooting at, but it's not needed. And you'll notice Dom has just slowly been creeping forward this whole time to get those new instances, and only halfway through the duration of this smoke generator. So it can definitely still kind of put down a smoke wall for the same total time. Just like I said, the individual puffs don't last as long. Now, unlike the Belfast, the Perth doesn't get a radar, but it does get a spotting plane and keeps the torpedoes, but it loses the heel. So, some pluses, some negatives, but ultimately I think it's still a very strong ship. But my personal opinion is every ship is good, every ship is bad. It all comes down to who is sitting in that seat controlling it, because there's some ships that are considered overpowered that in one person's hands, might as well be a tier 1. And then other ones that are considered weak that in the right hands just absolutely work the enemy over. And the thing I think Dom's doing really good is keeping at range. That Texas is a very dangerous ship to a thinly armored cruiser like the Perth. So this kind of slow, strategic advance, getting into hard cover, really is going to benefit him long term. And it's a shame those bombers are showing up, because otherwise there would be no sight line to Dom in his Perth and no way to hit him. And he puts the spotting plane to use to get the range to hit that Texas. And anyone paying attention, the Texas has already put out a fire. So all he has to do is light one fire and it's gonna burn. Sadly, doesn't look like that's gonna happen. And personally, I would just continue sailing straight ahead and get out of here. And that looks to be exactly what Dom is going to do. takes a shot at that spotted destroyer right as he disappears and ends up overleaving. Looks like the Akatsuki cut his speed just enough to duck the first shells and got going again to sneak past the second set there too. But this is where the British cruisers kind of advantage comes in, you know. Having that hydroacoustic surge is going to be pretty beneficial in a second here if he chooses to hunt the Akatsuki. Now obviously you don't need it to spot torpedoes in this situation because there's lots of planes overhead. Your set of torpedoes has already gone by, and anything this Akatsuki is going to be able to launch is going to get spotted by those planes right now. And I'm guessing Dom sees that as well, and that's why he hasn't activated Hydro yet. With consumables, you have to know when to use them. Hydro isn't a skill that you can just put on and leave it on for, you know, the blanket duration. You kind of have to read the situation when it's going to be best to have on. Because obviously if you're coming up on a smoke, you want it, and you hate to have wasted it when you're just sailing in open ocean going, I'm just going to turn Hydro on because I can. The obvious exception to that being, if you're in a division and you've got 3 ships with Hydro or any combination of Hydro and radar, then just coordinate between the group of you, stick close together, and you can pretty much have that, you know, soft bubble up around you at all times. The other thing I am noticing now is this spotting plane has been up for quite some time. Still 30 seconds left on it, and that's impressive. I did not realize that it would remain. I'm so used to that, you know, kind of 2-3 shots you get out of a battleship before your spotting plane disappears. So to have, you know, what I can only imagine was a minute 40 or something is very useful. Unfortunately, doesn't manage to light any fires on that Nagato, and that's when a Hatsuharu gets spotted. And speak of fires, just finally got one on the Nagato. And things are looking good for Dom's team. Well, partly good. They've lost a lot of ships, but they have all the caps. So in this situation, I'd be a little worried about, you know, just the total number of ships on my team. But the big advantage you have in a situation like this is the enemies have to make a move. You can take up purely defensive positions on the map and wait for them to drive into you. And these British cruisers are great at that. The torpedoes mean that it's very hard to push around an island at you, because you can just choose to single fire those torpedoes or put them all in one ball that just wrecks something. And the kind of other advantage, well, not advantage, but good point is they still do have destroyers left. Because in a defensive situation, destroyers are very important. And the reason is torpedoes have this amazing ability to deny areas. If you set yourself up and put a torpedo down a gap, ships see that. They're not going to want to sail down that exact same gap because they know something's out there that is launching torpedoes down that line of fire. And you can actually start herding a team with the torpedoes into a situation or location that is more advantageous to you. And this enemy team's gotta get moving. And they just really aren't. And part of the reason is they're all sitting up here, and then another massive group north of sea kind of just circling this island. And you notice that Fubuki just gave Dom some smoke, and right away hit the thank you button. That's a huge help because it means Dom still now has his own smoke to use. He's going to be able to remain in this general location for quite some time and just shoot at this sea of targets that he really has access to. Finishing off the Miyoko, now he can move on to working at this Hatsuharu, who, granted, is kind of at that cusp of where you can reliably hit a destroyer. Anything outside 10k can be very difficult unless that destroyer decides a straight line is their friend. And they may have done that. They're definitely going for that Mutsu. And, well, new premium Japanese battleship didn't hold up so well in that situation. But the Mutsu was left alone over at Alpha for quite some time. So personally, right now, the big things I'm thinking about. You have 2 destroyers over in A. I don't want to put myself inside range at the South Island here because you know torpedoes are going to be coming through that gap. The targets I want my guns shooting at would be this Fuso, and it looks like that's exactly what Dom is doing here. He's backed himself up into a location and is getting the sight line on a Fuso. But you'll notice he hasn't fired yet. And the reason a player might do this is you basically want to wait till they're right in at this close range of your detection before you start shooting, because it means when you start shooting, they've got to sail further to get out of your range. I've witnessed a lot of Atlanta captains really mess this up. Something will come just inside that, stock 11.1 fire range, and they just go crazy shooting at the target. And, any player who knows what's shooting at them goes, oh, it's Atlanta. I just have to turn away and sail like a half kilometer further away and it can't hit me. So by waiting for a target to come in right to the edge of your detection, you can see even though this Nagato is turned for the torpedoes and will probably attempt to sail away, from the 8.8 kilometers he is away to the 12.8, that's now a 4-kilometer gap that a big slow battleship has to cover to get out of gun range. Unfortunately for Dom, fortunately for that Nagato, enemy Mitsuki shows up and you just have to deal with the destroyers. Late game, trying to hold a cap like this, it's gonna be the destroyers that will cost you, because they'll get the detection for the BBs and really mess you up. And this is a situation that is perfect to have that hydro active, and right as I was starting to see it, he activated it. You've seen a destroyer, he sailed past, side on, there's probably torpedoes in the water. And that early warning, plus being forced to kind of just continuously move in the smoke, means Dom's well clear of them and able to just get moving and sail away. And the second he's spotted, you can see the indicator there showing all the ships aiming at him. And there's that low health Hatsu. This should be a pretty quick kill here. One good volley is all you need, and one good volley is what he gets. One destroyer down, and he's got the other in his sights, and this enemy DD... Fire looks like finished off a Fuso, and he's about to get another kill here on this Mitsuki, because that Mitsuki turned, tried to get close to this island, or just didn't see it, and holy cow, gets a detonation. What a series of events. Went from pretty much an untenable situation where you're down massively on ships, surrounded, to 3 kills in like 40 seconds. And despite things looking bad, I would argue that they aren't. The way this enemy team has played this whole game has been very passive and non-aggressive. So you can take advantage of that in a situation like this. Clearly the Akatsuki is working at this Nagato, and it looks like some torpedoes might be on target. Their enemy carrier has headed over to A. You know the location. The rest of the ships have been spotted over here near Charlie. That's really freaking far away. What that means is between this Akatsuki and Dom, they can get rid of this Nagato without having to face fire from 4 of the remaining enemy ships. They can then slip into A and take out the carrier. And then they'll be back to having 2 caps. They'll have almost closed the gap. And between the Akatsuki and Dom, they should be able to pretty effectively exchange spotting. The Akatsuki can spot for Dom while he's in his smoke. And then when Dom smokes up, he can open to a range and spot for the Akatsuki, who can then smoke and shoot. And that's how you deal with battleships late game, where you've got, a a big slow target versus two of you. Manage your concealment as a team. And the pair of them finish the Nagato off, the Akatsuki getting the final say. Dom is careful not to run aground, and he has a big decision to make here. Loop back for B or go for Alpha. Now, what you can see is he's going for B. Personally, I would have gone into A. But that's for one to make. Now, I would have gone into A because I wanted that Ranger. I want to get the kill because the planes overhead can do some serious damage, but they also provide spotting. Now, just based on the fact that no gunfire has come his way yet, it's a destroyer sitting in the Bravo cap. Those battleships are big, they're slow, you know it's not them who have managed to get up there. So you've got some time here, so get rid of the ship that is spotting, and he seems to completely agree with that, having 180 the second that Ranger was actually physically spotted, and now him and the Akatsuki are working him over, and gets a very convenient fire and a Citadel with his HE, and picks up the Confederate. And while he works this Ranger over, I'm just going to take a moment to explain something, because I think some people don't fully understand how HE versus AP works, and why you can get Citadels on something with HE. And the basic reason is, HE detonates on contact. It's why IFHE is so strong, because when you add that extra penetration count, angle stops mattering. So with AP, angle comes into it very much. The shell normalizes a bit on contact, but for the most part, if you're not pretty much straight on, it's going to be deflecting out, so it can be hard to land those big hits. Though, with the armor of a Ranger, that's not too difficult. Now, the way you can get some of those Citadels using HE is if that shell detonates against a surface that is the Citadel, it just does its raw penetration check. If it's high enough, you get the Citadel. If it's not, well, you get whatever damage it does. That's why HE can be very interesting, and is really the bane of the Royal Navy cruisers in this game. Their armor is all so thin that you can quite often get Citadels with HE on Royal Navy cruisers. Now, most of those will come on the gun casement rather than the engine room, but that is the fact of the matter, because I think something like the Edinburgh has 19 millimeters on its gun casement for armor, which is next to nothing. Anyways, back to the game here. You can see the enemy carrier didn't look to have gotten the order off for those planes to drop, which is absolutely excellent for Dom, considering this destroyer is closing. He's spotted by the planes, and they did drop. Interesting. That is quite a delay from the time of the carrier's death to that torpedo, but fortunately it looks like he's going to be able to dodge it. The excellent acceleration of this cruiser, getting him out in front of the Akatsuki's torps, the Hydro giving him enough warning to duck between those, and he should be able to take out this Akatsuki at very minimum before he goes down, and the scores are almost even. They were absolutely in the ditches, and they've managed to come back. The Akatsuki holding on 49 health. Come on, buddy, get the kill. There it is. Picks up the Kraken. Next up is this Kiev. And the Kiev is a deadly destroyer. Those guns rip apart cruisers at this kind of range, so you definitely have to be careful. But Dom has some torpedoes of his own and has a tough situation here. The Kiev's only got one turret facing aft, so you kind of just decide, I'm going to tough through this. I'm going to take the damage, and that's when the game ends. And I was definitely a little confused there at the end. Looking at the clock, there were 10 seconds left in the replay clock, and his guns were loaded. I could have sworn he was going to get the kill on the Kiev, which would have put them over the top and won the game. And that one is one of the closest battles I've seen. I've had one or two where it's literally just one team ticking up before the other, and that's what's ended it. But the shot was in his sights. The game was in hand. He could have won, and he didn't. And all I can assume is that the clock I saw on the replay here was wrong, and the game actually timed out right before he managed to get the kill, which is such a heartbreak. But either way, just an amazing game. 366,000 credits, 2,500 experience, Confederate double strike, a Kraken unleashed, 106,000 damage in a tier 6 cruiser is absolutely amazing. And it was all guns. None of that was torpedoes. The 5 kills, 9 fires, 4 citadels. Just an amazing game. And I thought they had it. Such a letdown to see that loss. But either way, 1,600 base XP is very respectable. And you can see the Akatsuki down there in 5th place. Helped out. Maybe things could have gone a little differently. And one of the things that definitely surprised me at the end there too was how long those planes had before their drop. I did not expect a carrier to be able to drop that late after dying, but he must have done an auto drop and the planes were inside, so they looped around before they finally got the proper line. And when you look at the damage, it doesn't look that impressive on the first page, and unfortunately can't scroll through in a screenshot. But Dom did a lot of damage to a lot of different targets. This wasn't one of those games where all 106,000 damage came from like 2 targets because he was able to just lob HE at battleships in the back. He was in there mixing it up, doing the work that needed to be done to try to win this game. And in the end, despite a premium or a standard account, 338,000 credits. This is a premium ship after all. Would have been over 500,000 with a premium account, and 2,500 looks like 3,802 had it been premium. So very well played, Dom 3026. Thank you for submitting this replay. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I certainly did. I really didn't think the Perth would be that good, but it looks to be in the right hands, and Dom's hands appear to be quite gifted with this ship. So thank you very much for the replay. If you guys enjoyed this, please consider subscribing or throwing a like on this video. Both help the channel out. And as always, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you guys later.